Our last edition of the show, Frontier Opening Bell. I'm Temple Ashaju. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the program this morning. We've got Chima Okadike, consumer goods analyst with Vetiva Capital Management in Lagos, Nigeria, joining us this morning. Thank you, Chima, for coming through. Boston Amofaye, executive editor here at Frontier Africa Report. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for gracing the show this morning, the last edition of the program this week. Let's look at the markets. Where were they yesterday? They actually settled in different directions. The Nigerian stock market was down negative, of course, by 0.30% on Thursday. BRVM stock exchange in Ivory Coast was positive, almost 1%, but couldn't touch that mark, but it was 0.96% positive. The Egyptian stock exchange closed negative, 69 basis points down. The Nairobi stock exchange in Kenya was heavily positive by 1.45%, 145 basis points, and Johannesburg stock exchange closed upwards as well, uptick 41 basis points on Thursday. The Eastern African headlines now, we've got Rwanda Central Bank floating 15-year Rwandan franc, 20 Rwandan franc bonds to develop capital markets. Moody's reaffirms B ratings for Cooperative Bank, Kenya Commercial Bank, and of course, Equity Bank, the three key banks in Kenya. IFC, that's the International Finance Corporation, plans some 5.4 billion Kenyan shilling facility to I&M Bank in Kenya, and that's a subsidiary of I&M Holdings in Kenya. Djibouti's Salam Africa Bank buys 100% stake in Uwezo Microfinance Bank, of course. KenGen plans a $1.95 billion facility now to boost power output. AfDB Uganda signed 1.25 trillion Ugandan shillings road financing deal, something mainly expected to bring about some kind of a sanity on the roads of Uganda, Kampala specifically. Boston, let's bring these headlines to you and see how we can get the thoughts of Chima on some of them.
Well, I'll start with the EFDB Uganda road financing deal. And if you're on social media, you would have seen the EFDB posting some pictures or images of that bridge over the Zambezi River, connecting Zambia and one other country in Southern Africa. Look, this bridge has a rail line on it, has a double lane, and has also a lane for pedestrians. It's one of the 21st century type of bridge that you can find on the African continent. And it just tells me something about how the EFDB has been moving ahead to try and provide infrastructure that are up to speed, rather than some of the kind of things we do on this West Coast here, specifically speaking to Nigeria. We just build bridges without thinking forward about how we can use one single infrastructure to deliver a number of facilities, for example. So Lagos State is planning the 4th Mainland Bridge. Is it going to have a lane for rail or a light rail by the side of it? Will it have a whatever for pedestrian? Look, I love what these guys are doing at the EFDB, and I'm going to keep commending them for doing such a very wonderful job. So, as you said, clearing up the whole Uganda, look, the whole East Africa down to the south, which is called the Comesa period, or whatever, the Sadiq region, all the way to Comesa and all of that, put together, those folks have a very huge land corridor that they are trying to, that is good for intra-Africa trade. And it just crossed from one country to the other. It's also seamless. So a whole lot of infrastructure needed around that corridor. Cooperative banks, KCB, Kenya Commercial Bank, and Equity Bank getting B rating from Moody's, despite a bit of a dent on their books last year. I think they are in good shape, as it were. I think this Moody's affirmation of their B rating is good as they can get it. I love the EFC 5.4 billion funding story for Kenya as well, for one of the banks. It's all going to get a whole lot of money. We said it yesterday. The bank, Africa is getting a whole lot of money fast and furious for anywhere around the world. I just hope we know what we're doing and we'll get it right this time around.
Many thanks for that, Bosin. Chima, and your thoughts on perhaps the AfDB funding program?
Thank you, Temple. I just like to support what Basin has said. I think it's very positive. We see the AfDB steady saving African countries. Today, they're signing road financing deals within Uganda. And I think it's very important to see a body that is actually dedicated to doing what they were formed to do. The other time, I think on Tuesday, we saw news that they had partnered with the EBRD to provide a $2.5 trillion financing gap for innovators in Africa. So I think they're on the right path. I think that the AfDB is one body that we have rights in Africa, and we are quite optimistic, given their track record, their funding partnerships with many African countries, and the progress they have made so far. Like Basin said, a lot of countries in Africa are receiving a whole lot of cash, and it's quite important at this point, how given the steps a lot of countries have to take to rebound from the pandemic. So, and it's just very encouraging to see that we're getting the required or the needed support. Maybe not as much as we may need, but at least we're getting something that will lead us in the right direction. So I think it's very important. And I think the AfDB is one body that is doing great in Africa.
Thank you very much, Chima. This takes us to the Western African and Nigerian headlines we've got today. We have BUA Group or BUA Group chairman gives some 1 billion naira grants to University of Maiduguri under the tertiary education scheme. You have Cardinal Stone closing Nigerian exchanges trading day, lists some 5-year 5 billion naira 7% bond. And of course, Berger Paints, one of the listed companies on the exchange there, has got its full year 2020 results out. Revenue is positive by 7% and at 3.84 billion naira. Profit after tax is also heavier, 146 million naira. 146 million naira. That's actually a negative, a decline of some 67%. Data Pro holds Nova Merchant Bank's A rating on 10 billion naira bond. In Ghana, the PPI rises by 11.1% year on year in April 2021. Societe Generale Bank grants 8.4 billion CFA franc to scanning systems. Let me hear your thoughts on some of these corporate stories that we've got, Chima, before getting the buying of Bosun.
Okay, thank you. So first off is the BUA Group's news on giving about 1 billion naira in grants to University of Maiduguri. So we've seen that the company or the group has set up a fund to give such grants to many schools. It's not just the University of Maiduguri. Has given one such grant to the University of Ibadan, and then another such grant to ABU, that's Ahmadu Bello University's area. I'm not sure if there are others, but I know that it has, committed to giving a certain large sum of money to many of these schools for different purposes. So for this purpose, but the University of Maiduguri's purpose now, I think it's for to enhance innovation among students. For others, maybe for hostels and building of infrastructure within the school, which I think is very good in terms of the company's corporate social profile. It helps to put the company in so much more light, and it's a way to give back to the community, and it just puts them in a very favorable light with the community where their business is situated, and I think it's very good. We also have the story on Cardinal Stone that is listing its 5 billion naira 7% 5-year bond. So I think this bond was released in 2020 because it's supposed to expire or terminate in 2025. And I would just like to say that Cardinal Stone really got quite lucky issuing out a 7% bond, because I don't think the market will be as receptive to a 7% instrument at this time, given that rates are really increasing in the fixed income market. So I think it was very timely how they came into the market last year, and they were able to get such loan, in the market at the time. Also, the fact that they were able to list on the NGX was about to say NSE. The fact that we're able to list on the NGX has, I think, giving a bit more visibility to the bond. Previously, I think they were only able to trade on the FMDQ, and now that they're able to trade on the NGX, it makes it a little, would I say liquid, but it makes it more tradable. You know, investors are a lot more able to, if you feel like there are other options or more attractive options in the markets, you can sell your bond. You know, you can decide to buy if you feel like you missed on the action, and it just, you know, put things on another exchange, another market, kind of just increases that visibility or availability of the bond. Also, we have Berger Paints releasing the FY20 results, which, if you look at revenue, was very good, was quite positive. However, coming down to their PAT, we saw a decline about 6 to 7%, which is very significant. The reason for the decline is down to a very large increase in their cost of raw materials, which affected their gross profit. So the company had stated that due to the COVID-19 pandemic, global supply chains were affected. They were unable to get their raw materials at favorable prices or at, you know, reasonable rates, and so that affected their costs significantly. We saw that affect gross margin, gross profit, so that affects their EBIT, and we saw also finance costs, trouble with finance costs, finance income, given that last year we saw low rates affect. So just in total, accumulating all these unfavorable factors, we saw that although revenue was quite positive for the firm, we saw that affect their PAT. However, given that a lot of things have sort of stabilized in this year or in this period, we still have some troubles with, some companies will still have some troubles with the with sourcing, especially in light that there are still some forex challenges. They may still have some problems with their cost of sales or their gross profit, but I think overall we should expect a more positive performance from the company, or from many companies in general. But you know, Berger Paints is one of the outstanding paint companies in Nigeria, and you know, we should expect to see them rise above it in this year. I think the last news will be Data Pro holding Nova Metro Bank's A rating on the 10 billion naira bond. I think it's very positive. So, given the very positive performance of Nova Merchant Bank in 2020, and in terms of their gross earnings, they quite outperformed analyst expectations. So it just makes sense that the rating agency would hold a very good credit rating for the bank. So I think it's nice to see for Nova Merchant Bank.
Thank you very much for your eloquent analysis on the show this morning so far, Chimba. I really appreciate it. Well, we know that sometimes when you have ratings being released, but for some of these companies, it signals the possibility of capital raising and all of that. So let's watch out what Nova Merchant Bank has in the works for the investing public at this point in time. Bosin, I know you know this, that sometimes when we go to AGMs, one of the things that, or one of the issues that shareholders, investors generally tend to often complain about is CSR, so much of corporate social responsibilities. How much of this that BUA Group is carrying out at this point in time do you see becoming concerning for investors going forward?
No, I think one company that has done a bit so well on this MTN Nigeria, and they've had a whole lot to show for what they're doing. They have an MTN Foundation. They are intervening in a number of areas. This is good, as you have Dangote Cement and Dangote, Aliko Dangote's Foundation on the other hand, and BUA is also doing this on the other hand. University of Maiduguri, I have been there just once, and despite the whole insurgency and what have you, you'll be surprised at the facilities that they have at the University of Maiduguri in Borno State, northeastern part of the country. And when you find this kind of money go around and being monitored, there's a whole lot more in terms of CSR that will happen in Nigeria. And the whole corporates need to do a whole lot more. I was bring this out to at least for all the corporates that are listed on the exchange. And I think they can do a whole lot of more meaningful CSR. My concern, however, is this. This has to be very strategic. If you look at Dangote, for example, doing the business school, building the business school in a particular university, I think somewhere in the southeast or so, which was just this year or last year or thereabout when it was unveiled. Look, I love that, and it's quite strategic. Our educational system and whatever hasn't been up to speed through the Ministry of Education. So in terms of managing these assets, become an issue for me. But I love it when some of these CSR are going into public universities rather than private universities or private schools. So the more they do this into public universities, public tertiary institutions, polytechnics, and the rest of them, School of Technology, Science and Technology, the better. And this CSR could also be a little bit targeted. And if, for example, BUA Cement or Lafarge or Dangote could build us it can create a university based on science, technology, English, and mathematics as a standalone. I would love it as well. You understand? If you're trying to understand what I'm trying to get, it's not just putting a building or $1 billion in a university, which is good. But if they could just give us something new that will help us create jobs, harness what you can call the entrepreneurial, innovative skills, whatever, that our youths have. I think I would love that. If there's a school or university for youth entrepreneurship only in Nigeria, I would love that. Maybe one of these big companies could give us that youth entrepreneurship university that is focused only on youths who are doing entrepreneurship. And then we begin to have something that will begin to lay a foundation for a new business, a new economy that is ahead of us. If you try to get, maybe there's a school for digital technology, separate again, and you can work it out. I think I will really, and you can tie it to the Silicon Valley, you can tie it to the MIT, you can tie it to any other big institutions in the UK and Europe. I think I would love that. I love what they've just done, but just putting $1 billion into an existing university, where does the money go? When the buildings is put together, how will it be managed in the next 5 years or 3 years down the line? What becomes of the facilities in there? We have a very poor maintenance culture, and accountability and responsibility in this country. It's in every one of us. So let's be clear here. So if BUA could put $6 billion together, I would prefer perhaps a youth entrepreneurship university in Nigeria. And that will be a focused university. And I'm sure it's going to get a license or a registration for that in 24 hours from Mr. President and the rest of his team.
Thank you very much, boss. And let's now move on to the Southern African market, where the rand becomes steady against the dollar yesterday as SARb, the South African Reserve Bank, holds repo rates at 3.5%. Tiger Brands got its half-year revenue up by more than 8%. New venture capital fund coming in June. Massmart got total sales positive by more than 8% to over 30 billion rands. Of course, British Petroleum, ENI, plans merging Angolan oil and gas operations into one unit. The Securities and Exchange Commission and Zimbabwe pushes for women participation in capital markets, a bit of inclusion there, financial inclusion. The Bank of Mozambique also keeps rates, liquidity lending rates at 16.25%. Chima, I know that next week, Monday, we've got the Nigeria's Monetary Policy Committee meeting. That's the Central Bank's MPC holding, and you will certainly on Tuesday, the day to have the briefing about their decision as well. But would you like to string that with that of the SARb in South Africa?
For the MPC meeting that we expect next week, we recently saw inflation results this week, and we saw that inflation, headline inflation, didn't rise as fast as we had been expecting, as analysts had been expecting, as fast as it did last month. So with that, we are kind of expecting the CBN to use that sort of decline to maintain rates steady, although the gap between inflation and the interest rates in the economy remains very significant. But we still expect that they will maintain the rates that across all windows. We still expect that they will maintain the rates at their next meeting as they try to watch what further impacts their decisions will have over the economy. For the report that the SARb held at 3.5%, I think this is if you look at the inflation rate, inflation level of 4.4% and compared to their rate of 3.5%, I think they're actually at a better level. Also, when you look at the Bank of Mozambique is leaving its liquidity lending rate at 16.25, which it recently raised this year from about 13% to 16.25. Most of these people are really trying. Most of these banks are really trying to keep their lending rates in tune with the inflation level of inflation. Many of them may not have put the rates above the inflation level. I'm not sure what the inflation level is for Mozambique, but I know for South Africa, their inflation levels are 4.4%, and they're having their repos at 3.5%. Although it is still below inflation level, it is still somewhat in line. When you compare it to Nigeria's inflation level of about 18% and compare it to the MPC rates or the MPR of 11%. So I think many of these, in that sense, I would say that maybe they're doing something a little bit better than not at the moment, but we can also still see where the CBN is coming from in trying to manage inflation and trying to ensure that a lot of money is being pumped into making the economy trade properly.
I thought you would also like to be gender biased here because the Securities and Exchange Commission in Zimbabwe is pushing for more women participation in the capital markets.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. There should be gender diversity everywhere. We should always push for more participation of women, although I think based on merits. But there are always women that have earned the position, and we all just need to give them a better chance at being represented. So I think kudos to the SEC at Mozambique.
Thank you very much, Chima. Thanks a great deal. Bosun, you got the rest of the headlines?
Yes, I got it. No, just to touch on the few stories she did. Justice to the inflation, MPC, Mozambique, SARb, outlook on Nigeria. Look at two of the corporate news, by the way. Massmart reporting sales about 8%. Tiger Brands, both of them are in the retail sales business in South Africa. Good numbers. If you ask me, considering how tough South Africa had faced the coronavirus infestations and the whole rattling of the economy and the people and the government, as it were. So these were not bad. These are good news, as it were. The latter part of that story for Tiger Brands is creating a new venture capital fund, which they said will be up by next month. That's something I want everybody to watch out for. The idea is to create this fund that will help startups in foods and beverages business. Just put your money where your mouth is and your mouth where your money is. I think that's what Tiger Brands want to do with that venture capital fund. So if we can have that in Nigeria as well, in which a new venture capital can focus on startups that want to set up in food and beverages. We just need this in Nigeria. Can someone is there somebody listening to me, by the way? Because we can handle a whole lot of this issue of job creation, whatever, by using the instruments of the market, and maybe Vertiva Capital and the rest can just take a look at some of these things and say, look, how can we help folks who are doing some of this little thing, whether you're making cakes or you're trying to process a little bit of food locally and what have you, and raise up some fund, venture capital fund, whatever it is, whatever for them, and we can just begin to get things up and running, whether it is in fashion, for example, or even entertainment or what have you. We can be very creative using the instrument of the market to get a whole lot done. So for Tiger Brands to set up a venture capital fund for food and beverage companies in South Africa startups, that is the way to build them. And by the time they grow, they become such big, then they lock into the bigger economy. If you understand what I'm trying to say, They use local raw materials and what have you, and you can encourage them to, and you can take them to the markets, you understand? So you grow even the stock market or the equity market, or they go for bond or commercial papers on FMDQ, they go listing on NESD, OTC as an illicit security. So the horizon is huge if we just get out of our box and just think. So that's just all I need to say on that. Thank you.
You did say them well, Bosin. Thanks a great deal. Let's move on to the northern part of Africa, where you have Sudan expecting relief for 80% of external debt, says the Prime Minister there. Cabinet okays EFG Hermes, SFE joint acquisition of Arab Investment Bank. Egypt raises holdings in U.S. Treasury bonds to over $2.2 billion in March 2021. TSE listed companies' overall income rises by 8.4% to 4.7 billion dinars in the first quarter of this year. And in Morocco, Agma Lalou Tazi, I guess that's the insurance company over there, is recording a turnover of 9.3% to 28.13 million dirhams in the first quarter of this year. Bosun, let's get your final thoughts before we hear that of Chima.
Yes, just to wrap it up in a few seconds, Egypt holding about $2.2 billion of U.S. Treasury bonds. That is it. That is it. I wish I would have that. If I can hold $2.2 billion on the U.S. Treasury bonds, I'm in business. I'm home and dry. Thank you.
Thank you, Bosun. Chima, where do we see our market?
Chima, I wouldn't mind that, by the way.
Thank you. I wouldn't mind at all.
That's part of your foreign reserves. You know, these guys are clever, these Egyptians. I think I need to put them in to visit second time this time.
All right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Chima Okadike, consumer goods analyst with Vertical Capital Management. I appreciate your presence on the show and your insight as well today. Thanks a great deal. Bosun Omofaye, thank you for your editorials on the show this morning. This has been the last edition of the show, Frontier Opening Bell. Today, go trade them positively as we head down to the market today. I'm Temple Ashadi. I'll see you next week. Bye for now.